Either is okay, but you can call it either one. The only thing you can't call it is the Trump Strait. They don't like that idea.
Okay, now that is a wartime president. In the middle of the war, he started talking about what is now the...
What you just saw is not a clip from a parody show. That is not a deep fake. That is the President of the United States, in the middle of an active military conflict, asking people what to call the body of water at the center of his own war. And then floating the idea of naming it after himself. We are going to break this down piece by piece, because what this segment exposes is not just one embarrassing moment. It is a pattern. A documented, undeniable, on-camera pattern of a man who started a war he did not understand, cannot explain, and cannot even name consistently, while simultaneously consulting psychiatrists about his political future, lying about negotiating with Iran, and watching the Strait of Hormuz sit 90% closed with zero resolution in sight. This is what a presidency in freefall looks like. And the evidence is coming straight from his own mouth. Let's start with the thing that rarely gets enough attention, the psychiatric admission. In a Fox News interview heavily edited and clearly designed to be favorable, Donald Trump could not stop himself from revealing that he has been consulting people, and I'm quoting him directly here, deep into the psychological world to figure out why his party might lose the midterms. Think about what that tells you. This is a man so consumed by the fear of losing congressional power, losing the ability to block investigations, losing the firewall that protects him from exposure, that he is sitting down with psychological consultants to try to reverse engineer voter behavior in his favor. And the reason he is terrified of losing that congressional firewall is sitting right underneath the surface of everything happening right now. A Democratic-controlled House means investigative committees. It means subpoenas. It means staff working 7 days a week going through every contract, every enrichment deal, every decision made inside this administration that benefited Trump personally. He watched Hungary's electorate rise up and throw out a corrupt prime minister he had been openly trying to prop up. He even offered Hungarian voters American government cash to keep that prime minister in power. And they rejected it anyway. Donald Trump looked at that and saw his own future coming at him. So yes, he went to the psychological world for help. And what makes that consultation even more revealing is what those experts have been saying about him for nearly a decade. This program featured a book called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump in the very first year of his first presidency. 27 psychology professionals who had not examined him directly but had watched him extensively contributed their analysis. By later editions, that number had grown to 37. The consistent diagnosis across those professionals? Repeated, dangerous lying as a sign of serious mental disturbance. A man who does not know reality, who reshapes it to fit his internal needs. That was 10 years ago. And the commentary then was that it would get worse under stress. It has. The Strait of Hormuz moment is not a slip. It is a symptom.
When somebody gets elected president, that party always loses the midterms. I don't know why. I don't know why. Nobody could explain it. I asked people that are deep into the psychological world, I said, why is it that a voter votes for the opposite party? It's even when you have a good president.
Play that back. Listen to the sentence structure. I asked people that are deep into the psychological world. That is not a normal way any person speaks. Not a politician. Not a businessman. Not anyone who has spent 80 years around the English language. And that is not a minor point. Because the way a person speaks under pressure tells you everything about what is happening inside. This is a man who built his entire brand on projecting strength, dominance, and total certainty. And in a Fox News interview, which was edited favorably, remember, he could not produce a clean sentence about asking some consultants a basic question. The brain that once performed boardroom toughness on reality television is now producing word salad on the subject of why voters might not like him. But here is the part that cuts even deeper. If Donald Trump genuinely did speak to anyone in the psychological or psychiatric field, and statistically given the number of professionals who have publicly analyzed him, there is a serious chance that the person sitting across from him has read the literature. has seen the assessments, believes he has severe psychological problems, and Donald Trump, completely unaware of that irony, walked into that consultation looking for political advice. That is not a strong position. That is a man grasping. Now let's get to the war. Because the psychological deterioration does not exist in a vacuum, it is playing out in real time against a genuine geopolitical crisis that Trump created and now cannot control.
Either is okay, but you can call it either one. The only thing you can't call it is the Trump Strait. They don't like that idea.
Okay, now that is a wartime president. In the middle of the war he started, talking about what is now the central point of contention in his war, an important body of water, an important shipping channel, that he apparently didn't know existed or didn't know what to call when he started his war. So he had to ask people. We heard former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's laughter on Morning Joe this week when she was talking about Donald Trump having no idea that Iran had the power to close the Strait of Hormuz before he started his war and shut down 20% of the world's oil supply, as it has done. And tonight the Strait of Hormuz remains 90% closed, according to CNBC analysis of commercial shipping there. And Donald Trump wants to call it the Trump Strait. Why? Because it would be easier for him to remember? And what's hard to tell now is when Donald Trump said, nobody has ever ended one war, was that the stupidity speaking or was that the insanity speaking? The problem for a president is it doesn't make any difference. Stupidity is as dangerous as insanity.
Have you been negotiating a lot all day? I mean,
Yeah.
Is that why your voice is hoarse?
I've been screaming at Iranians all day, yes. A little bit of a laryngitis because of my I've been screaming at Iranians.
So we may have the title of the next fawning Amazon documentary about life in the Trump White House, this one about Donald Trump instead of Melania Trump. Screaming at Iranians, coming up on Amazon. He seems to be lying about two things there. First of all, that's just his voice. That's the way he sounds on a good day now. I mean, asking why your voice sounds so weird and awful does seem like a well-targeted question for Donald Trump, who seems to choose a vocal style that he thinks sounds tough guy, I guess. It was not the vocal style he chose in the 1980s or the 1990s when he could be downright soft-spoken in interviews. Donald Trump's voice is a performance choice, just like his hair is a performance choice and always has been. And they are both very weird choices. And the voice is an unbearable choice for most people to listen to. The other thing that Donald Trump is no doubt lying about is screaming at Iranians. I've been screaming at Iranians all day. No, he hasn't. First of all, he doesn't do anything all day, except maybe look at social media and watch TV. And it is more than likely that Donald Trump did not speak to a single Iranian today, or that day when that was taped before they edited it. But if we were to take him at his lying or demented word that he was screaming at Iranians all day, it means he was losing all day in his screaming negotiations with Iranians, which have achieved absolutely nothing as of this hour tonight, with the Strait of Hormuz still 90% closed. Donald Trump is the first wartime president in history who doesn't know what to call his war.
I had to go to a war. I had to go and fight either a military operation. Some people would call it a war. Some people call it a military operation.
There it is. 3 clips. 1 through line. A president who started a war he did not understand, cannot describe, and is now losing, while pretending on camera that everything is under control. Start with the Strait of Hormuz. This is not a geographic footnote. The Strait of Hormuz is the single most strategically critical choke point in global energy supply. 20% of the world's oil moves through it. Before Donald Trump launched his military operation against Iran, he apparently had to ask people what it was called. And then, and this is real, he floated naming it after himself. The Trump Strait. In the middle of a war. while it sits 90% closed to commercial shipping. Hillary Clinton laughed out loud on live television this week when discussing the fact that Trump had no idea Iran had the power to close the strait before he started bombing. That is not political mockery. That is a former Secretary of State, someone who has sat in the Situation Room, managed crises, read intelligence briefings, laughing at the sheer scale of the ignorance that launched this conflict. And then there's the screaming at Iranians moment. Someone asked why his voice sounded hoarse, and Trump claimed it was because he had been screaming at Iranians all day. Let's be clear about what's actually happening in that answer. 1. That is just his voice. That gravelly, forced baritone is a performance choice he's been running since at least the mid-2000s. 2. The idea that Donald Trump spent the day in active shouting negotiations with Iranian officials is, by all credible accounts, fiction. His own schedule, his media consumption habits, and the complete lack of any diplomatic progress suggest those conversations either did not happen or achieved nothing. 3. And this is the part that exposes the deeper problem. If we were to take him at his word, then he was screaming all day and the strait is still closed. Which means the screaming isn't working, which means he is losing. And then there is the war naming problem. He called it a military operation. Some people call it a war, he said. He had to go fight it, either a military operation or a war, depending on who you ask. This is not semantic flexibility. This is a president who does not want to own the word war. Because owning that word means owning the consequences. It means owning the closed shipping lanes. It means owning the oil prices. It means owning every casualty, every escalation, every day the strait stays shut. Lyndon Johnson lied about Vietnam. George W. Bush lied about Iraq. But both of them at least called their wars wars. Trump cannot even clear that bar. He is the first wartime president in American history who will not name his own war, because naming it means being responsible for it. And responsibility is the one thing this presidency has been architecturally designed to avoid. What you are watching right now, the psychiatric consultations, the geographic confusion, the screaming claims, the war that isn't a war, is not a rough patch. It is the operating condition of a man who started something he does not understand, in a region he did not study, against a country whose capabilities he did not assess, and is now watching the results pile up in real time with no exit and no explanation that holds together for more than 30 seconds. The stupidity and the instability are no longer separate issues. As was said in this segment, stupidity is as dangerous as insanity. And right now, America is getting both. Simultaneously. From the same podium. If you want more breakdowns like this where powerful people get exposed on the record, hit subscribe and drop your take in the comments. Who do you think completely controlled this exchange? And what was the exact moment the other side started falling apart?